Honorable Joseph E. Cardoza presiding. Please be seated. On criminal case 16-1-0133, State of Hawaii versus Stephen Capobianco, jury trial.
Good morning. The record will reflect the presence of counsel for the parties. The defendant is present, the jury is present, and we have our witness on the witness stand. So we'll continue with that examination of our witness. Or are you? I think you were finished.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And good morning. Do you understand that you're still under oath?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Oath.
Defense has no questions for Mr.
Oh, okay. Are there any juror questions? Sorry about that. Anyway, don't be sharp today. Thank you. You're two. All right. You may call your next witness.
State calls Kathy Matsuoka to the stand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
You may be seated, and you may proceed with your examination of the witness.
Yes. Madam Clerk, will you prepare 425 through 428 and 289, 293, and 296? Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
My name is Kathy Matsuoka.
Ms. Matsuoka, where do you work?
I am a forensic laboratory supervisor at the Honolulu Police Department's Scientific Investigation Section.
How long have you worked at the Honolulu Police Department?
I've worked at the Honolulu Police Department since 1998. I started as a criminalist in the forensic biology unit there, and I promoted to forensic laboratory supervisor in 2014.
And where is the Honolulu Police Department forensic laboratory located?
The Scientific Investigation Section is located at the main headquarters of the Honolulu Police Department at 801 South Beretania Street in Honolulu, Hawaii.
What are your duties and responsibilities as laboratory supervisor?
I am responsible for supervising the forensic biology, trace evidence, and drug analysis units. So I manage the personnel within those units, and I'm responsible for their operations.
Can you explain to us what is the forensic biological analysis unit?
The forensic biology unit at the Scientific Investigation Section would receive evidence of a biological nature. So they would attempt to characterize body fluids as, say, blood or semen, and then they would continue on to do DNA analysis.
And the trace section?
Our trace evidence unit is responsible for kind of odds and ends forensic evidence. So that might be things like hair that might be at a crime scene. They may look at gunshot residue that may be deposited on the hands of an individual who shot a gun. They also We'll look at evidence from fire debris cases.
And what is the drug section responsible for?
Our drug analysis unit is responsible for analyzing any substances or powders or crystals that are recovered to try to determine if it's a controlled substance, like, for example, methamphetamine or marijuana or cocaine.
How many criminalists work do you supervise under your supervision?
Approximately about 20.
And, will you explain to us your duties and responsibilities as a laboratory supervisor in regards to overseeing evidence movement within the scientific investigative department of the Honolulu Police Department?
I normally don't personally receive evidence because I don't do analysis on cases, but in the event that our SIS evidence custodian is not available, or in the event that the analyst is not available to receive a transfer of evidence, then I may be asked to facilitate that transfer.
You mentioned that you have a background as a criminalist. Will you summarize your educational background for us?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Microbiology from the University of California at San Diego, and I have a Master's in Pharmacy in Forensic DNA and Serology from the University of Florida.
And have you attended any specialized trainings in forensics?
Yes, I have.
Does the Honolulu Police Department have an accredited DNA laboratory that you supervise?
Yes.
Okay, will you explain that accreditation?
The forensic DNA, or the forensic biology unit, is accredited by an organization called ANAB, and it's held that accreditation since, I believe, 2002.
And does the forensic biology unit have standard operating procedures or SOPs for DNA testing in order to meet that accreditation?
Yes, it does.
Can you explain that for us, please?
To meet our accreditation requirements, we do have to have a number of policies, and these policies are really going to cover everything from the receipt of evidence to the analysis of evidence to the writing of reports and the issuing of those reports. So all of these standards that we have to meet under accreditation, we have corresponding policies for.
And how is that accreditation maintained?
We have, when you maintain your accreditation, essentially we have on-site inspections by the accrediting body every other year. So they do send an assessment team. They look over our facilities, they look over our case files, they look over our policies and procedures to make sure they are appropriate. And in the off years when they do not send an assessment team, then we have to send them our documents. And they'll do what they call a bench surveillance, where they may not come to our facility itself, but they will still look through all our documents.
Now, in regards to the years 2014 and 15, and through 2016 to date, does the Honolulu Police Department maintain that accreditation you've explained?
Yes.
May I have exhibits 425 to 428, please? Oh, you know what? Just one moment. I'm just not, 428's not here yet. It's on its way. Yeah. Mr. Hulse will be here shortly. So, let's just back up for a second. Let's go over how evidence is kept in the Honolulu Police Department and how it moves throughout your forensic laboratory there at HPA. Will you explain to us how evidence is received, intaken, and transferred within your section of the Honolulu Police Department?
The scientific investigation section may receive evidence in a number of different ways. For our own Honolulu police cases, there is an evidence room that individuals will go to and receive the evidence there. When we do process cases for the neighbor islands, the evidence could be hand-delivered, or it could be sent through some type of mailing courier, such as Federal Express, U.S. Postal. So the flow would just kind of depend on how we receive the evidence.
And once it is received by the Honolulu Police Department, either by hand or by courier service, what happens next?
An individual from the SIS will look at, I believe in Maui's case it's called a property and evidence voucher, to see that the report number and the property control numbers match what might be on the evidence packaging, to make sure we are receiving the correct evidence. The individual receiving the evidence will look at the packaging to make sure it's intact, so that there are no rips or tears where evidence could have either fallen out, where contamination could have been introduced. We also make sure that the evidence packaging is sealed with tamper-indicating tape, as well as a signature going across the tape. And again, that's just to make sure that evidence couldn't be lost, couldn't have fallen out, things couldn't have entered that packaging to contaminate it, to contaminate the evidence, or that the evidence couldn't have been tampered with.
So once it's intaken and inspected for signs of tampering and proper packaging, as well as the matching information in regards to what's being received, what happens next?
The next portion would be the chain of custody section on that property and evidence voucher, would be signed both by the individual transferring the evidence as well as the individual receiving the evidence. The date and time of transfer is also recorded.
And why is that information placed on the chain of custody?
That information is important because it shows who is responsible for that evidence at any given time.
And where is the evidence stored?
It depends on the nature of the evidence. For biological evidence that I receive, I will store it in the evidence vault that's located in the forensic biology unit.
And what about non-bio evidence?
It depends. Like if I receive evidence, say for our trace evidence unit, then I may put it in the trace evidence vault. If I receive evidence just of a general nature, maybe mixed type evidence, depending if it needs special storage conditions, it may go in different units, evidence vaults, or it could go in just in our general evidence storage vault.
And how is that location tracked?
As long as the evidence is in my custody, I would know where it is. Because I don't hold on to evidence long term, I will try and transfer it right away to the assigned analyst.
Why do you do that?
There's no reason for me to hold evidence. I'm a supervisor, I don't do the analysis itself, and I don't want to delay analysis. So as soon as the analyst is available, that transfer will be made.
You've indicated different vaults for bioevidence or what you call mix or trace. Where are those vaults located at HPD?
All of our forensic units have individual laboratories, and within those laboratories are individual evidence vaults. So for example, the trace evidence unit has a trace evidence vault. The forensic biology unit has an evidence vault. Our drug analysis unit has an evidence vault.
Who has access to those vaults?
The individuals who have access to that unit would have access to the vaults, as well as the 2 forensic laboratory supervisors, one of which is myself, and our forensic laboratory director. So for example, the forensic biology evidence vault, the members of the forensic biology unit would have access, as well as the 2 forensic laboratory supervisors and the director.
And how do you know who accesses the vault?
The vaults are secured with electronic keys. So it's a combination of a physical key along with an electronic signature. So every time somebody goes into that vault, you can track what individual opened it, because each key is uniquely identified to the person it's assigned to.
And is that per your protocol there at HPD in the forensic laboratory?
Yes.
Will you explain the precautions taken within the laboratory in regards to generally for all 3 of the sections you've talked about to prevent alteration, substitution, or tampering with evidence?
So all of the evidence is stored sealed. We don't leave open packages of evidence in those evidence vaults. So that way no one could, even though multiple people may have access to that vault, because all the items are sealed, they would not have access to the evidence itself.
And have you personally handled evidence?
Yes.
Right. Can you give us an idea of how many pieces of evidence in your career you've handled?
Well, I was assigned to the forensic biology unit from 1998 to 2014. So I received evidence on a at least weekly basis because I was performing analysis on evidence.
I think we'll just wait till 428 gets here. May I approach the podium at 425, 6, and 7?
Yes.
Yes. And then what's next? May the record reflect and showing defense counsel states 425, 6, and 7. May I approach Ms. Musgrove?
Yes.
And for the record, 425 is the toothbrush head encase in freezer. 426, cotton swabs, samples of 5 nails. And 427, cotton swabs, raw. Ms. Matsuoka, I'm showing you states 425, 6, and 7 for identification. Will you take a look at each of those exhibits, and 428 will follow shortly, and let us know if you recognize the exhibits and the attached paperwork.
I do recognize the evidence packages and the associated documentation.
And how do you recognize them?
On the property and evidence vouchers, I recognize my signature on the chain of custody portion. On the evidence packaging, I placed what we call SIS control number stickers on each package that has my initials on it.
What is the purpose of an SIS control number and putting the sticker on a package like you've done on these 3 exhibits, 4, 2, 5, 6, and 7?
The SIS control number is just a way for us in SIS, the Scientific Investigation section, to be able to track property and evidence vouchers and to match them up with the packages that were received with that particular voucher.
Now, you indicated a chain of custody form.
Yes.
Will you explain to us what you mean when you say you recognize the chain of custody form?
There are property and evidence vouchers that are attached to these exhibits.
Are those from HPD?
No, they are Maui's, my police departments.
And what are you referring to in regards to a chain of custody?
The top portion of that property and evidence voucher has a description of items, evidentiary items, and the lower half of that form shows essentially a grid, and it shows who received the signature of the person the evidence was received from, the signature the evidence was received by, and a date and time. And I recognize my signature in that block.
Now, in regards to, is there any other paperwork attached to those 3 exhibits besides the MPD property voucher? No, to the evidence packages, there's just the Maui Police Department property evidence vouchers as well as the yellow exhibit sheets. Okay. Now, why did you sign each of those 3 exhibits, 4, 2, 5, 6, and 7?
The chain of custody portions?
Yes.
Whenever evidence is transferred, in this case it was transferred from another person, what I would do is I would look at these vouchers to look at the Maui Police Department case number as well as that property control number, match it up against the evidentiary packaging to make sure that I am receiving the right items. As I mentioned earlier, I'll check to make sure the package is intact and sealed, and at that point then I will sign my name as having received the evidence from the person who is transferring the evidence to me. And the date and time of that transfer is recorded.
Do you remember the date and time that you received those 3 items, 4, 2, 5, 6, and 7? Or we're looking at that chain of custody you signed, refresh your recollection for your testimony?
Yes.
All right, we have a look at that form and let us know when your recollection is refreshed as to the date and time that you received 425, 426, and 427.
Exhibits 425, 426, and 427 were received by me on February 21st, 2014 at 10:10. All 3 exhibits were received at that same date and time.
You've explained to us that you don't usually receive evidence in your role as the supervisor of the forensic laboratory. Why did you receive those 3 items?
As I'm assuming it was because our SIS evidence custodian and the analyst were not available. And so when that does happen, then I will get called to handle the transfer of evidence.
Do you remember how this came in, whether it was by a courier service like mail or FedEx, or whether it was an in-person delivery?
This was an in-person delivery.
Do you remember who you met with?
I'm not familiar with the Maui PD investigators personally, but it was...
I'll check this here,
I'll overrule the objection. You may complete your answer.
I don't know the investigators personally, but the investigator does sign the chain of custody in my presence, and that individual's, I believe it's ID number, I'm not sure what the numbers refer to on the chain of custody, is 10069.
Now, when that person who you don't know who, was it a male or a female?
Male.
Okay, you don't know who the male is from MPD who signed that chain with the the number. Was that done in your presence?
Yes, the chain of, when evidence is transferred, that chain of custody portion, after all the evidence is checked to make sure I am receiving the right items, both of us sign together, the person transferring the evidence and myself, we sign in each other's presence.
So you watched him sign it
Yes.
and put down his number?
The signature and the number.
And to you, as a supervisor in the laboratory, what does that signify when the MPD investigator signed and put his number on the chain of custody form in your presence, and then you signed? Did you put your number down too?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then you sign and put your number down. What does that signify to you?
That signifies that that transfer had occurred from that individual who signed the chain of custody to myself.
And does do the forms attached, the property vouchers 4, 2, 5, 6, and 7 refer to another chain of custody that follows from this, or is it actually written on this chain of custody, the following entries?
The following entries are all recorded on this property and evidence vouchers attached to the evidence.
Do you have another method that you use sometimes as well? And by that I mean, are you always writing on the sending department's chain of custody form, or do you sometimes create another form?
There are times that another form is created. That's typically what happens when we receive evidence via a courier versus a hand carry or in-person delivery. So when a courier is involved, then the SIS chain of custody is generated. So it's like an internal chain of custody form.
And that didn't happen in this instance, why?
Because this was an in-person delivery.
Okay. So after you received it on February 21st from the MPD investigator, do you remember how you received it and how it was packaged?
I don't, because I focus more on the evidentiary packaging itself. So I wouldn't know if it was carried in some way or any special way.
All right, now you talked about HPD SIS property stickers.
Yes.
Will you explain how you've marked each of the items 425, 426, and 427 with your numbers?
So once I received the evidence and the chain of custodies were signed, I then placed a sticker on each evidence and property voucher, and there is a matching sticker on the evidence packaging itself. So on those stickers are recorded the report number that SIS assigns to that particular case. It has the property control number that we assign in SIS to that case, and it has my initials.
So for 425, the toothbrush, what HPD property control or SIS number did you assign it?
The SIS report number that is assigned to that is 14S01312, and the control number is SC8221.
All right. And you see that there as you marked it when you received it February 21st, 2014.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that
Do you
question?
see that number there on the sticker as you marked it on February 21st, 2014?
Yes, I see the sticker on the property and evidence voucher as well as the evidentiary packaging.
All right, terrific. Let's go on to 426, the swabs from the nails, swabs from the 5 nails. Will you tell us the report and control number that you assigned to 426?
The SIS report number is 14S01312, and the control number that SIS assigns is SC8223.
Turning to 427, the swabs from the bra. Will you tell us the report number and the control number assigned by each bidder?
The SIS report number is 14S01312, and the control number is SC8222.
Now I have a question for you regarding multiple items that may be contained within an item of evidence. Are there times when you or the criminalist will apply sublabels to individual items that may be packaged as a group within a single envelope?
An analyst might, but in my capacity I wouldn't, because I don't open the evidence packaging. I transfer it sealed.
So you apply the control number and the report number?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in regards to 425, 426, and 427, after you applied the numbers that you just testified to, what did you do with those three items? The toothbrush, the swabs from the 5 nails, and the swabs from the bra?
So looking at the property and evidence vouchers, these items weren't transferred right away to the analyst. So that being the case, because it is biological evidence, it would be stored in the evidence vault in the forensic biology unit until such time of the transfer.
And how is that storage in the vault where bio evidence is stored indicated, if at all, on property and evidence voucher?
It is not indicated on the property and evidence voucher. The items are just considered to be in my custody during that time period, and that includes the storage time.
And then when did you next handle the evidence?
Looking at the property and evidence vouchers for 425, the next time I signed that chain of custody was on February 24th, 2014 at 7:15. And that is the same for status exhibits 425, 426, and 427.
And so on February 24th, 2014 at 7:15, when you handled them next, what did you do with them?
I would have taken the evidence out of storage, again in a sealed state, and then I would have transferred it to Samantha Kashimoto, ID 101730.
Who is Samantha Kashimoto?
She is a criminalist in the forensic biology unit.
How do you know that?
She's one of my employees that I supervise.
And how long have you worked with her there at HPD?
Since the beginning of her employment, but I don't exactly recall when she started employment. I would guess at least 10 years.
And then after signing it over to Samantha Kashimoto, 2/24/14 at 7:15.
Yeah, just a clarification on that. Whether 7:15 a.m. or p.m.
7:15 a.m.
As in 0715?
Military time 0715.
Your Honor, may I just have a moment to go outside and get
Yes.
an item or two? May the record reflect I'm showing defense counsel states 428. May I approach Ms. Matsuoka?
You may.
Ms. Matsuoka, I'm showing you it's been marked for identification as states 428. Will you take a look at this item and let us know whether you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. How do you recognize it?
Looking at the property and evidence voucher from the Maui Police Department, I see that my signature is in the chain of custody portion of that form. I also recognize our SIS control number stickers that have my initials, and that's placed on that property and evidence voucher, as well as the evidence package itself.
When did you receive, and for the record, states 428, tissue from the lower right jaw. When did you receive 428?
I received this item, or this evidence package, on February 21st, 2014 at 10:10 a.m.
Was it along with the other three items you've already testified to, 425, the toothbrush, 426, the swabs from the nails, and 427, the swabs from the bra?
Yes, all are documented as being received at the same time.
Right. Did you, now just to sort of bring 428 up to speed with the other three, did you treat it in the same way you've described? You handled 425, 426, and 427?
Yes.
Did you assign it a report number and a control number?
The SIS report number that was assigned was 14S 01312, and the SIS control number assigned was SC 8220.
And did that go along into the storage of the bio storage as you've testified? You stored 425, 6, and 7?
Yes, because it is biological evidence, it was stored in the forensic biology unit's evidence vault.
And did you also inspect it as you inspected the other three items for tampering and labeling, and the other parameters that you've testified to are part of your examination and intake procedure?
Yes, the evidence would have been checked to make sure that the packaging was intact, and to also ensure that the evidence is sealed with tamper indicating tape and a signature.
And also, the handover that you received that from, was that part of the sign over from the MPD officer who signed in front of you with his E-number?
Yes.
All right. Besides the toothbrush you have up there, the swabs from the nails, the swabs from the bra, and the tissue from the lower right jaw, did you receive anything else from the MPD investigator on February 21st, 2014?
No.
Now, you indicated that you gave, that you stored 425, 6, 7, and 8, and that you gave 425, 6, and 7 to Samantha Kashimoto. Did you also give her 428?
Yes, the chain of custody shows that the exhibit number 428 was given to Samantha Kashimoto on February 24th, 2014 at 7:15, which would be AM.
And then did you handle those items, the toothbrush, swabs from the nails, swabs from the bra, and tissue from the lower right jaw again?
My signature is not on the remainder of that chain of custody, so no.
May I approach Ms. Matsuoka to retrieve the exhibits?
Yes.
clerk's permission, can I keep them at council table?
Yes.
Now, I want to turn your attention to, could I have 289, 293, and 296, please? May I approach Ms. Matsuoka?
Yes.
Okay. I guess we'll just place them in, and as you need them. All right. In regards to states, are there times when evidence is received by your section by courier addressed to, say, for example, a criminalist, but is received by another party?
Yes.
Can we explain that?
Oftentimes, the neighbor islands will ship evidence rather than deliver evidence in person. When evidence is shipped, they use a shipping courier such as FedEx, UPS, US Postal. While items may be addressed to a specific person, typically when an agency like FedEx comes to drop off, they may be dropping off a number of packages. It could be items a laboratory purchased, it could be evidence, but they just only will do one delivery and one sign-off.
And so if it's addressed to, say, for example, Samantha Kashimoto, is there a time when you would sign for the receipt of the FedEx box?
Yes, so if I am asked when FedEx arrives, again, they may be dropping off a number of different packages for a number of different people. They won't wait for each individual person to come to sign for those packages. So I might be called up and I'll sign for the entire shipment. And then I'll look through the packages to see who each individual package is assigned to.
And how do you account for that receipt of FedEx shipped evidence items in regards to chain of custody?
So when FedEx drops off packages, they will scan each box. And so maybe if there's, say, for example, a total of 8 boxes, they would scan each one. And then they would ask for my name, and then I would sign on their FedEx. I guess they have these little handheld electronic devices, and they would ask for my signature. And so that's where it will be documented that I received a particular FedEx shipment.
Do you then sign on to the chain of custody or not?
If I open the package, I will. But if it's evidence, I actually will not open up the packaging, and I'll call our SIS evidence custodian over, and she would be the one who opens the package and starts the chain of custody.
And who is that?
Our SIS evidence custodian is Ivanette Lee.
Does she have a nickname?
She usually goes by Ivy.
Would you take a look at 289, 293, and 296? You can do them one at a time. In regards to the associated paperwork, which may be inside the outer packaging. And for the record, 289 is the black jeans, 293 is the gray colored hoodie sweater, 296 is the dark colored bra.
do see all the paperwork for Exhibit 289.
Okay, does your signature appear on any of the paperwork for 289?
No, it does not.
Does it indicate how, viewing the chain of custody, does it indicate how the item 289, the black jeans, were delivered to the Honolulu Police Department SAS?
Objection, relies on hearsay.
The objection is sustained.
Do you know how that package got to HPD?
On the property, or
Objection
Maui,
relies on hearsay.
The objection is sustained.
Did you sign for any of the exhibits in front of you? And I'm talking about sign for FedEx. For any of the information, for any of those three exhibits you have in front of you, 289, 293, and 296.
there's a FedEx number indicated, but I don't have the FedEx paperwork itself to see if my signature is present.
May I approach Ms. Matsuo?
You may do so.
May the record reflect as shown defense counsel the FedEx tracking for package 7987 428 12271.
Although for the record and for the court's information, that's a paper generated by FedEx, not the witness.
Thank you.
Now, in regards to that FedEx shipment 798742812271, do you recognize that paperwork?
It's FedEx tracking paperwork, and it lists the tracking number.
Right. Do you, does your name appear as a party receiving that package?
Yes, it states that it was...
This is hearsay. She's reading hearsay.
The objection is sustained.
Right. Ms. Matsuoka, having reviewed that,
Move to strike any answer.
Granted.
do you know whether you received a FedEx package in May of 2014 that you signed for Samantha?
Objection. Foundation now counsel is leading and testifying, and she's still asking for a hearsay response.
Let's determine if the witness has any memory.
Well, my fear is that she's testifying. Counsel's testifying with the information right now.
Do you,
Right. The objection is sustained.
do you have, does looking at that FedEx paperwork refresh your recollection as to whether or not you would have received the shipment of items in May of 2014 and signed for them for Samantha Kashimoto?
I wouldn't recall a specific receipt of FedEx shipments because I do regularly sign for FedEx shipments. So knowing what was received on a specific day, I wouldn't recall.
Okay, so say if, for example, your name appears as part of the FedEx tracking but not on the chain of custody that you've explained.
So I'm going to object. Assumes facts not in evidence.
The objection is overruled.
Okay, so assume there's an incident where you show up on somebody else's paperwork, like FedEx paperwork, but not on your chain of custody. Will you explain to us how that happens?
Objection of relevance.
And the objection is overruled.
So as I mentioned earlier, we often receive FedEx shipments. We receive them on a daily basis. So the FedEx person dropping off the items, again, it could be a mix of both purchased items that we might be receiving from a vendor. It may include evidence. All of those packages are signed for at once by a single individual. The FedEx person asks for my name. They ask for my signature. and then I disseminate out that all the packages to whoever they are addressed to.
Okay, all right, and just before we finish up, will you look at, did you look at 293 and 296 to examine whether you're on that paperwork as well? And then, Your Honor, after Ms. Matsuoko looks at the paperwork, we'll just ask for a recess so we can have a meeting to move this along.
Right. Right, we'll be taking a recess anyway.
Okay, sure.
My signature is not on 293's paperwork.
Okay, what about 296?
And the same is true for 296.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, you take a recess at this time.
Yes, all right, we'll take a recess at this point. Thank you.
Recess.